Hello, this is Good Morning Transfers. What a start to the week, eh? With transfers in jeopardy. Samu Amorodian's move from Atletico Madrid to Chelsea is now off, and it could have implications on Conor Gallagher. The latest on all that on the way. The transfer domino is in full swing. Matthijs de Ligt and Noussair Mazraoui are flying to England right now ahead of moves to Manchester United, with Aaron Wan-Bissaka moving to West Ham. We have loads to discuss and debate throughout today. And if you're out and about, you can keep up to date with all the latest transfer news with our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. Just scan that QR code on your screen right now. So morning, everyone. Morning to Dan, Flex and James as well. But let's get right into this, shall we? Because we're going to start with that huge news. Atletico Madrid striker Samu Amorodian's move to Chelsea is off following contract issues. This now has a big effect on Conor Gallagher. Could João Felix play a new key role in this? As for Julian Alvarez, that deal is still expected to go through. We'll have a medical today. That is what we are hearing. But James, let's start with Amorodian, because it is dramatic developments in all of this. Initially, we thought it was going to have a big impact on Alvarez too. We think now that's not going to be the case, but still, it's a vital deal in terms of Conor Gallagher's move.
Absolutely. So here's what we know. Chelsea agreed a £34.5 million deal with Atletico Madrid for Amorodian, and Atletico agreed a move for a similar fee for the sale of Conor Gallagher from Chelsea. Now, Gallagher completed his medical. He was pictured at Atletico Stadium on Friday as well. So this was effectively a swap deal, but with each side able to pocket around £35 million to help them from an accounting perspective, and also spread the cost of the £35 million spent across 5 years to help from their own PSR, financial fair play point of view. So they're not swap deals, but if one of those deals collapse, then that really puts jeopardy on the second one. As you said, it doesn't look like Julian Alvarez's move will necessarily be impacted by this, because as far as Man City are concerned, nothing changes. He's expected to undergo his medical today at Atletico. So everything agreed, deal worth up to £82 million for Alvarez. And a reminder, Chelsea want to sell Gallagher to Atletico Madrid because they've been unable to tie him down to a new contract. They don't want to sell him to a Premier League rival. And they want to get that £34.5 million in pure profit to avoid him potentially leaving for free next summer and then not being able to have that £35 million they can put back into the books and potentially go and spend money on more players. Hence why Chelsea and Atletico are looking to salvage this deal by finding another player that Chelsea can buy instead of Amorodian. And so João Felix could be the player who solves this transfer puzzle. He's been out of favour at Atletico, on loan last season at Barcelona, of course, on loan for 6 months at Chelsea. It wasn't hugely successful. Simon Graham Potter was there. He departed shortly after. Frank Lampard came in for the end of the season. He only started 3 or 4 games under Lampard. So that's why some are feeling maybe lukewarm about this deal. But let's bear in mind, this is somebody who, in 2019, Atletico Madrid spent more than £110 million on.
Yeah. I must say, when I woke up this morning, I wasn't expecting to be talking about João Felix, but I'm sure Chelsea fans as well might be thinking the same thing. Is Felix what they need? I mean, effectively, they're bringing him in, if they do, Chelsea, instead of Amorodian, who's an out-and-out number 9. Do they need someone like João Felix?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question, isn't it? And I think, as James mentioned, his previous spell at Chelsea, he made 16 appearances in the Premier League. He managed 4 goals. I think, having watched Chelsea this weekend, I saw them play yesterday against Inter Milan, and they're very much in need of a number 9. And I think that's why they're looking at Amorodian to be that focal point, although he's still just 20 years old, to play that sort of role. We know João Felix isn't necessarily that kind of player. And also, when you look at the player's point of view, as James mentioned, this is a player we've seen at Barcelona last season. We were talking about it just before. He was quite adamant he wanted to stay at Barcelona, and that move didn't materialise. He has started pre-season well for Atletico Madrid. I think he's got 2 goals in 3 games for them so far. So if the move does happen, Chelsea are getting a player in form, perhaps, and maybe confidence high. But does he fit maybe what Enzo Maresca needs in that number 9? Which, what I saw yesterday, a lot of balls were coming through, the box, and they were making a lot of chances, but they lacked that 9 just to finish off in the box, and that's what they need.
It's a really difficult one for João Felix as well, because he just looks like he needs a home now. He's been moved from pillar to post. He's dreamed to play for Barcelona, come to the Premier League at short notice, couldn't quite hit it off there. Big outlay on him, like you said, from Benfica into Atletico Madrid, which didn't quite materialise. And I think the perception around João Felix is that he's like a failed wonder kid. And I think there's a real good player in there. I just think he's had such inconsistencies and different circumstances that have surrounded him and the different moves. He's just looking for a home, and nobody thought it would be Chelsea after they didn't actually try to buy him after the loan. But I do actually feel for him, because I think he's a really talented player who just has lost his way and just can't find somewhere to be permanently.
Yeah. How about Conor Gallagher? I mean, how is he feeling right now? We saw him in the Wanda Metropolitano. He's been walking around. He's probably got the kit already, but this might fall through, and he's effectively been told by Chelsea that he's surplus to requirements.
Yeah, I mean, he'll definitely be on edge, to say the least. I mean, to be pretty much all but unveiled as an Atleti player. He's probably going to be thinking, I've tried to do my best here in terms of being at Chelsea, and it hasn't worked out. And there's been a lot made about the treatment of Conor Gallagher and academy graduates at Chelsea. Their model is clearly to sell their homegrown players. But he's been patient. He hasn't taken an option to stay at Chelsea, and he's found his move. And I'm sure he'll just want to get his feet under the carpet, get into training, and just kick on. And now, in true Chelsea fashion, there's a domino that now needs to fall, and now another conundrum and more sort of situations that need to be sorted out. So I think if you're Conor Gallagher, you're looking at this extremely cautiously, extremely nervous, because he wants his move. And I think the way he was, maybe not treated, but the way it ended at Chelsea, I think he deserves to go and get that next chapter now. Not another loan somewhere else. He go and get that next chapter. And right now, he's not being afforded that luxury.
Yeah, so I mean, that is in doubt at the moment. We will let you know when we hear anything on that. One thing that isn't in doubt is the fact that Chelsea have signed Pedro Neto from Wolves for £54 million. So they put their hand in their pocket again, Chelsea. If you look at a lot of the recent signings, quite a few haven't worked out yet. But when I look at this one, I think this has got potential to be a real success, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Chelsea are getting one of the most creative, one of the most direct wingers in the league, who I also think, I know Gary O'Neill at Wolves really appreciated how good he was travelling with the ball as well. I mean, he's a player who can instantly bring you 10, 20 yards up the pitch in transition. I think the interesting thing, again, having watched Chelsea yesterday, was, Noni Madueke, Mykhailo Mudryk, who started the game. It was very much about attacking the fullbacks and getting crosses into the box. I think Mudryk perhaps didn't take that chance yesterday. Of course, it's pre-season, we'll wait and see. But it looks like there's probably a position there somewhere, either on the left or the right. Neto is versatile, as we know. He can even play in that Nkunku role behind the striker as well. I do think the only question is, although it was a great moment when he was presented at half-time on the pitch, and all the fans gave him a great applause and reception, we have to remember he averages 16, 17 Premier League games over his last 3 seasons. So he just needs to work out those injuries. But perhaps a bigger squad, not maybe the same load he would have had at Wolves last season, they'll be able to manage that a bit better.
It's a really interesting signing. He is so exciting, but when he's fit, and Wolves alluded to that in their press release they put out yesterday as well, that I think was a factor in why they felt like it was the right deal at the right time to cash in on him at this point in his career. 130 appearances over 5 years isn't brilliant. And last season we saw just how good he was when he was fit on that right flank. 11 assists, 3 goals, but did suffer 2 different hamstring injuries last season. That'll be the concern. He's been linked with the likes of Manchester City, Tottenham and Arsenal over the course of the last few years. The reason why they probably didn't try and sign him earlier was because of the concerns about his injuries, I think.
I suppose we better chuck him on the Chelsea signings graphic then, if we can fit him on, because there have been quite a few already this summer. I mean, admittedly, not too many big fees there, but they do seem to have moved away slightly from what they were doing last year and signed even younger, even more unproven players. But this is the big signing for them, 54 million. I mean, when we mentioned there about how many games he's missed and the injuries, is that quite a big layout? Is it a big risk?
Yeah, it's a big risk, a big layout. Of course, there's an opportunity there, though, because if they can figure out these fitness issues, and hopefully for Pedro Neto's sake and for Chelsea fans, he has put the worst behind him because he's had some really bad ones. It can really turn out to be a fantastic signing. And we were saying it, when Chelsea have sort of a fully fit team, and you look at some of the senior players or established players that are there. Of course, there's a lot of young players that are going out on loan, and some Chelsea fans maybe don't even know who they are. But when you look at Cole Palmer, Christopher Nkunku, then you add in Pedro Neto now. Of course, the hunt for a striker is going on. Then behind that, you're talking Caicedo. Lava has looked good in pre-season. You've got Enzo Fernandez to come back into that as well. All of a sudden, you're going, hang on a sec, if they all function to where they can do, Chelsea got a really decent outfit, and where they're at with the centre-backs now, Fofana coming back in after long-term injury, they need to keep him fit as well. Really, really interesting to see. So I think it's exciting, but at the same time, with the type of decisions Chelsea have been making in the market and the scattergun approach, it seems, and the changing of the guard with the manager, it's also a really uncertain time for Chelsea fans as well. So really difficult to know whether to get behind that project or be really fearful that it's not going to work again.
All right, we just got two other lines to bring you on Chelsea. Sky in Italy's Gianluca Di Marzio reporting that Juventus have Raheem Sterling on their target list as a new winger, and Sky Germany are reporting that Stuttgart want to sign Armando Broja on loan. So maybe we'll get some outgoing soon because they've got a lot of players on their squad list. Let's get to Manchester United, though, and Sky Germany have sent us these pictures of Noussair Mazraoui and Matthijs de Ligt. Both players are on their way to Manchester right now. They'll have medicals today. De Ligt will join in a deal worth around £43 million. As for Mazraoui, he moves in a deal worth £17.2 million. The breakdown is £12.9 million plus performance-related add-ons of £4.3 million. That deal is happening because Aaron Wan-Bissaka to West Ham is now happening. He is having a medical right now. James, I'd like you to put some meat on the bone again here, because similar to what we spoke about earlier with Omarodian, this Wan-Bissaka deal is the key one in terms of the domino effect with the other two deals.
Yeah, from a Manchester United perspective, the only way that it looked like they could strengthen that fullback area in this transfer window was by creating budget and space in the squad. Aaron Wan-Bissaka into the final year of his contract, and there were no talks about extending his time at Manchester United, so that was the obvious choice. So what Manchester United did, they got a number of details in place and had an agreement in principle there with Bayern Munich around the signing of Noussair Mazraoui, so they were able to accelerate that deal if and when they reached a full agreement about selling Aaron Wan-Bissaka to West Ham. So United's pursuit of Mazraoui was completely linked with Wan-Bissaka leaving for West Ham. So Wan-Bissaka now has started his medical. I think it's taken a while for this deal to be reached, a number of complicated issues to be resolved regarding his termination of his time at Manchester United, personal terms at West Ham, and also the deal they've agreed, £15 million, which I think represents good business for Manchester United for a player who could have left for free next summer. So it means United now can close in on signing Mazraoui, and they'll feel like they've strengthened in that area and also recouped some money for Wan-Bissaka, as United have so often let players go for no money or for not much money at all. So I think they'll consider this being a good piece of business.
Flex, does Mazraoui excite you as a right-back? What's he going to offer that Wan-Bissaka doesn't?
Well, I feel like he's probably a right-back more in the eyes of what Erik ten Hag envisions the team to be like when it's functioning at full capacity. He's definitely better on the ball than Wan-Bissaka, more creative than Wan-Bissaka, more flexible than Wan-Bissaka, and I don't mean by limbs, because nobody's more flexible than Wan-Bissaka by limbs, but in terms of the positions that he can comfortably play in. The interesting thing about Wan-Bissaka is he offers such a unique skill set in terms of 1v1 defending. If you're looking for somebody better out there in terms of mark this winger out of the game, there probably aren't many better than him. But football is evolving and teams want to play on the front foot. And I think we have seen some of the things that Aaron Wan-Bissaka does struggle in when he maybe gets higher up the pitch in terms of combination, in terms of chance creation and progressing the ball. But in 1v1 situations, he's absolutely brilliant. So I just think that Mazraoui will give Erik ten Hag much-needed options across the back line. And his comfortability with both feet in possession. If you've seen Mazraoui play, he's not scared to get forward. He can literally bomb on and go on the overlap, and he can put balls into the box with left and right foot with comfort and with ease. And that's something that Erik ten Hag is going to be looking at in the way in which he wants to play.
And just on that point, his versatility. I mean, at the moment, Manchester United need a left-back because there's doubts over Luke Shaw's fitness. Tyrell Malacia isn't scheduled to come back for a few more months.
Yeah.
And Harry Amas, who's impressed in pre-season, just 17 years old. he wasn't in the squad against Manchester City, and I think Erik ten Hag, that's a sign that maybe he's just not quite ready to play yet, or he doesn't have that trust just yet. So the fact he can play left back at the moment, looking at Friday's game against Fulham, they might need Mazraoui to play. But at the same time, you don't want Lisandro Martinez to be playing there, do you? Because I think United missed a little bit of him as centre-back against Manchester City on Saturday. The way he can play out from the back. If they do sign, and I know we're going to talk about it in a minute, but they do sign Matthijs de Ligt as well, I think that partnership is what you want to build this defence around.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about de Ligt, shall we? Let's just come to you on this one first. Varane obviously was a big centre-back signing. It didn't quite work out. Do you have higher hopes for this being the sort of the premium signing that Manchester United have been looking for at centre-back because of his age?
Definitely have high hopes whenever a centre-back comes into Manchester United because we needed to sort that out. We've always got high hopes. I mean, when Rafael Varane was fit, he was absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And when he didn't play, Manchester United were worse off. Matthijs de Ligt is literally just turned 25, will represent good value as well. But you look at what's happened with Manchester United's signings of centre-backs since 2019. Obviously, Harry Maguire with a huge price tag, and I think it's a common theme that he probably hasn't lived up to that. He's spent time as Manchester United captain and struggled at time. Rafael Varane, we've just talked about, who's now left the club, but was only available for around about 50% of the games. Lisandro Martinez has been a massive hit. Absolutely fantastic player, but now it's just about keeping him fit. Johnny Evans, I remember seeing Johnny Evans on pre-season tour last year and was just happy to see him about the place. I didn't think he'd get a contract, and he played the most out of the Manchester United centre-halves last year and played well. But there's no future in that, but he's been given another year again for the experience. And then we get to Leny Yoro as well, who's been signed, unfortunately, injured, but another one for the future. And Matthijs de Ligt represents fantastic value for a player so experienced, who has achieved quite a lot for a young age. And yes, he may have lost his way a little bit in terms of...
Has he stagnated a little bit? Because there was, 17 years old. He played Europa League Cup final. Ten Hag said that he had hopes for him being the best defender in the world at that point.
Absolutely. And I think he achieved an awful lot very, very quickly. I do think he's been unfairly labelled in terms of this player who is past it and, Bayern Munich don't want him, so that means he's not very good, or Juve. That's just not a true picture of what's happened. He's got over 100 appearances for Juventus, over 100 appearances for Ajax, and this is a very, very experienced player. And he has had a couple of injuries last year, but as soon as he's fit, Thomas Tuchel made sure he was playing. This myth that Eric Dyer was playing ahead of him and is being selected is just simply not true, in my opinion, when you look at the games that he's played. It's Upamecano and Kim Min-jae are the players who are kind of out of the team. But I just think he can be a fantastic signing for Manchester United in terms of experience. Then you have Leny Yoro, who's young, and he's the next one up and looks fantastic. And you bring that in terms of looking at the quality of the whole squad, so that when there's injuries, the drop-off in quality isn't massive again. And that's what was being sort of happening with when you go from Maguire to Evans to Lindelof, etc. There's such a gap and variation of type of player. I think Erik ten Hag will be very, very happy to get Matthijs de Ligt. Yet another Ajax connection.
Well, exactly. and that's the interesting thing, isn't it, here, in that we were hearing that when Ineos came in, Ten Hag's influence on transfers would lessen. But does this suggest that he's still pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes, this kind of a transfer?
What is fascinating is that if de Ligt and Mazraoui join the club over the course of the next few days, that will be 11 players Manchester United have signed since Ten Hag joined the club that have either played football in Holland or grew up in Holland, which shows that he still is having a significant say when it comes to transfers. Yes, a new recruitment team have been brought in to try and sort out United's transfer dealing, but clearly Erik ten Hag is having a big say on what Manchester United are doing in this window. We know he has in previous windows, but especially in this window with the signing of Joshua Zirkzee and now with de Ligt and Mazraoui joining the football club. So it does show that, yes, Christopher Vavell's now head of recruitment, Dan Ashworth, sporting director, Omar Barada as CEO, they're very much keen to work with Erik ten Hag. They've given him confidence, they've given him a new contract extension, and yes, they want to build players for the long-term future of Manchester United. I think this is a sign that they really do back their manager. They took 2 weeks in that end-of-season review, despite Manchester United winning the FA Cup. They finished 8th in the Premier League, so they need to have this internal review about what went wrong last season, what can we fix, and is Erik ten Hag the right man to lead them into this new era? They think he is, and they're backing him by signing players that he's worked with and players that he recommends can help United move on to what United want to do. They want to be targeting the Premier League and Champions League once again in the next few years. So I think this shows they're really backing Ten Hag once again.
Also backing one of their main players, because another line concerning Manchester United is they're close to agreeing a new contract with Bruno Fernandes. There's a willingness from all parties to get a deal over the line. That's what we hear. And this contract is understood to be until 2027 with the option of a further year. So it is expected that Bruno Fernandes will be signing a new contract extension. We also have some breaking news for you, and this concerns Brentford, just coming in just a few moments ago, and it is that Jens Cajuste, the Napoli midfielder, is undergoing a medical right now with Brentford. The Napoli midfielder is in London to finalise an initial season-long loan move, but the agreement between the clubs includes an obligation to buy, not an option, an obligation to buy for £10 million. So Jens Cajuste, the Napoli midfielder, is having a medical with Brentford this morning. Loads on the way. We're counting down to the start of the Premier League season. You know what we're going to ask these guys? Which team has won the transfer window so far? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Still to come, we've got the latest on a potential Premier League return for Wilfried Zaha. But before that, an update on Kurt Zouma and a potential exit. West Ham remain in talks with Shabab Al-Ahli. However, his medical tests highlighted an issue. There is still a willingness from all parties to get a deal done. Terms agreed with the player and mutual termination of contract are sorted with West Ham. We're just waiting to hear what's going on with this medical. At the moment, Zouma is in Dubai awaiting developments. We will keep you posted on that. And that brings us nicely to our next section, which is who's won the transfer window so far. We've asked our three esteemed guests to give their answers. They chose before the break, and Flex, I mean, you can change if you want, mate, if that Zouma news affects anything. But you've got with West Ham.
To Man United with our two. No, there's quite a few candidates for this, actually. It's quite interesting to divulge into. But I have gone with West Ham. I have gone with West Ham so far. I think it's really exciting what they're building under Lopetegui in terms of the players that they've brought in. If you're a West Ham fan and you look at the types of players coming in, really on the front foot, really aggressive in the market, good prices for the players. I mean, you're looking at Todibo, Wan-Bissaka looks like he's going to get confirmed later on today. Somerville in from Leeds. Nicholas Füllkrug as well from Borussia Dortmund. I think that's a fantastic signing. Saw how good he was for Germany and Euros and, of course, Dortmund last year. And I think they've needed a long-term answer to their number 9 woes. I think Mikel Antonio's been a fantastic servant to the club, but of late, he's had a few injuries and also not as prolific as maybe they would have wanted. They've had the likes of Scamacca, they've had Hilaire in the past, they've had Danny Ings. They just can't nail that down. And yes, he is a more experienced player. He's not in the peak of his powers like a young 20-year-old or mid-20s, but I really do think that he's a fantastic signing. Max Kilman in from Wolves, brilliant. So I just think when you look at it with what they've already added from the Declan Rice fee last year in terms of Alvarez and Kudus and Ward-Prowse, you've still got Jared Bow in there on a nice contract. Really, really good.
Yeah. A lot of excitement, isn't there, around the new manager as well, new styles. So how's it all going to gel with all those new players too? You've gone for a team I wasn't quite expecting to hear on this list of 3. You've gone for Wolves. Why?
Yeah, the Midlands are well represented on the screen behind us, aren't they? 2 out of the 3. And yeah, we're going to go for Lopetegui's former side in Wolves. And I'm going to preempt this by saying that maybe they haven't won the window yet, but I definitely think in 3 weeks' time they will. First of all, let's talk about the outgoings. You know, we know, like you mentioned, they've sold Max Kilman for £40 million to West Ham. Although that might be a really good signing for West Ham, I think Wolves will be really pleased with that fee. And now with Pedro Neto leaving, you're looking at a cumulative sale there for those 2 players for over £90 million. And I think when you look at Wolves' strategy, you know, the sporting director, Matt Hobbs, has been pretty clear with their strategy going forward. They're going to be looking to sell a player most summer windows to then reinvest that money into the squad. When you look back 12 months ago, they weren't in this situation. They were in a situation where they had sell Matheus Nunes, Nathan Collins, Ruben Neves as well, and they didn't have much income because they didn't really have a striker last season. And you look at where they've addressed the squad so far, Rodrigo Gomez, probably preempting Neto leaving, also signed from Braga. He looks very good on the right wing. Jorgen Larsson signed from Celta Vigo. Similar to West Ham, they now have a number 9. So I think with this extra money from Neto, over the next few weeks, they even have more of an opportunity now to reinvest and address different areas of their squad. So if I was a Wolves fan, I'd be pretty excited, I think.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on what they do, because as you say, they've got a kitty now, haven't they? James, who's won the window so far for you?
Well, we're still expecting Wolves to do a bit of work. One team who's done plenty, Aston Villa. The first thing they did, which was really important, prior to the 30th of June, they ensured they complied with PSR rules, so they won't face a points deduction next season. They did that by selling Douglas Luiz. I know that was really tough for them to do. They brought in 2 players. I'm not totally convinced by the 2 players they've got in return, in the term of Baranachea and Illing Jr., but that will help the squad depth they need to participate in the Champions League for the first time this season. They brought in Anana and Maatsen, those are their headline signings. That will really strengthen their first team. And they feel that they probably feel that Douglas Luiz void, bring in Anana. They made a profit on Moussa Diaby, quite staggering the amount of money they were able to sell him for in this window. They probably will feel like they've not replaced him just yet. Jaden Philogene has come back in. He was so impressive at Hull City last season. He's featured in pre-season. They probably will try and strengthen in that area, though Morgan Rogers has been really impressive in pre-season on that left flank. He can play across the front 3. Crucially, they've kept hold of Ollie Watkins the highest scoring player in FPL last season, all the goals, all the assists. The one concern will be, and the reason why Aston Villa fans perhaps aren't feeling hugely optimistic at this moment in time, their results in pre-season. 7 pre-season matches, they won 1 of the last 5. So that is why there are some concerns, and Watkins didn't feature in that final game at the weekend either.
Also, Ross Barkley on a free. I mean,
Yeah, we're not talking about him, are we?
No one's really, and I tell you what, just like he was a bit of a revelation last year at Luton for, you know, the area of the league he was playing in terms of being in a relegation battle, but he really stood out and has reignited his career. And actually, in terms of carrying out, you know, Emery's instructions, and I think he could be maybe one of the signs of the season.
Right, Ross Barkley back in the Premier League doing well. Still to come, will we see Wilf Zaha back in the Premier League? We will have an update for you very shortly. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Could Wilfried Zaha be returning to the Premier League this summer? Let's get the very latest and speak to journalist Kostas Lianos, who joins us live from Athens. Kostas, thanks very much for joining us. What have you heard? How likely is this to happen?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I spoke to my esteemed colleague Ioannidis last night, and she confirmed that there are indeed talks taking place between Leicester and Galatasaray over a potential loan deal for Wilfred Zaha this summer. Crystal Palace are also exploring a similar situation to bring back their favorite player to Selhurst Park. Galatasaray are open to a deal. The player is also keen on a Premier League return. Zaha was left out of Friday's league match against Hatayspor because he was holding transfer talks. Galatasaray manager Okan Buruk confirmed on that night that the player is keen on a Premier League return. There's a feeling in Turkey that a deal could go through, that Zaha could return to the Premier League. However, it's not as simple. It could be a little complicated, because Buruk's other left winger, Kerem Aktürkoğlu, is also strongly linked with an exit, with reports in Turkey and Greece suggesting that he's one step away from joining Panathinaikos, and that could cause an issue for Buruk, because he could be without a left winger heading to a key playoff clash with Young Boys in the Champions League qualifiers.
You mentioned a loan there, but would there be a fee involved as well? And what kind of fee are we talking about?
Well, the reports do suggest there's going to be a loan fee. So far, according to my reports and my sources, there's nothing has been disclosed in terms of the actual fee. But there's what I'm also hearing is there's going to be a loan fee, and probably the successful suitor would have to cover part of the player's wages heading to this coming season.
How's he been doing at Galatasaray? I mean, he's been there for a year. How's his form in that season?
Well, Zaha has amassed a total of 10 goals and 5 assists in 43 appearances during his debut season at Galatasaray. Of course, he helped Galatasaray win the Turkish Super League. He helped them finish third in a very difficult Champions League group that saw them eliminating Manchester United. However, all in all, it hasn't exactly been a home run. Zaha has been tried in his natural left wing. Buruk tried him up front as well. It hasn't been a home run for Zaha. The fans gave him a very warm reception last year upon his arrival to the club. The mood has kind of changed in the last few months, and the situation is that both the club and the player are in a situation where there's a mutual feeling of that a change would be welcome for the player and the club right now. It hasn't been very fruitful. Of course, Galatasaray are not in a hurry, really, because he has a contract till 2026. But all in all, both sides are open to a deal that could see Zaha going back to the Premier League.
OK, well, listen, let's go from the Turkish league to the Greek league there. And another player that Leicester are trying to sign is Panathinaikos' Fotis Ioannidis. What is the latest with this potential deal?
Well, the Telegraph reported yesterday that Leicester bid 27 million euros, which is about 23.2 million pounds for Panathinaikos star Fotis Ioannidis. That has been confirmed in Greece. That would be a record signing because Ioannidis would become the most expensive player to leave Greece for a club abroad. He would break Daniel Podence's record of 19.6 million pounds from 2020 when he left Olympiacos for Wolves. And he would also become the most expensive Greek player to join the Premier League, as he would break Dinos Mavropanos' record of 20 million euros when he left Stuttgart for West Ham last year. Of course, the situation is not simple. It's quite complicated for Leicester, because Panathinaikos insists Ioannidis is not for sale. There's been a lot of competition from clubs such as Bologna, such as Lazio, Sporting Lisbon, and also Ipswich. And everyone has been rejected, including Leicester have had one bid rejected, and Bologna have been rejected. Sporting Lisbon, even though Ruben Amorim, the manager, really wants him and sees him as a potential replacement for Victor Gyökeres, who has been linked with Arsenal. Lazio have had a bid of over 20 million euros recently rejected. Ipswich had 2 bids rejected before signing Liam Delap. The first one was 22.5 million euros. The second one was much more improved. It was 25 million euros with 4 million euros in add-ons, meaning that they technically offered 29 million euros, which is 2 million euros more than what Leicester have just offered for Ioannidis. Kieran McKenna was very interested in the player, and reports suggest he even talked to him and outlined his vision and plan for him. Now, with those fees, it seems that Bologna and Sporting will not be able to compete. Sporting alone would have to break their transfer record. And perhaps the most difficult part in this whole thing is that Panathinaikos really want to play in Europe, and they really need their best player in Ioannidis because they're facing a really tough task against Ajax in the third round of the qualifying stage of the Europa League. Panathinaikos lost to Ajax in Athens last week 1-0. They're facing a mountain of a task in Amsterdam this coming Thursday. And if they make it through, then they're going to get either Bode Glimt or Jagiellonia in the playoffs of the Europa League. But if they get eliminated, they're facing an extremely tough task against Lons in the playoffs of the Europa Conference League. And Greek clubs, traditionally, they don't sell their best players until the European qualifiers are done. They're really going to need Ioannidis in those games. However, in Greece, the feeling is that after the Ajax game on Thursday, the situation will start to clear. My estimation is that if Panathinaikos make it past Ajax, then there's a very good chance Leicester could get a deal to get him as soon as possible, because there's a difference between playing Bode Glimt or Jagiellonia against Lons in the Europa Conference League. And if they make it through, then they got Europe in the bag.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be quite hard to get that one over the line. Very comprehensive. Thank you very much, Kostis.
Thank you.
Right, these pictures just into us in those cars are Manchester United's two new signings, Matthijs de Ligt and Noussair Mazraoui. They are now at Manchester United's training ground. Both will have medicals today. They're in the building. That's two defenders coming into Manchester United. Could Crystal Palace end up losing two key defenders rather than gaining them? We will have the latest on Anderson and Guerhi's futures. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, Matthijs de Ligt and Noussair Mazraoui have arrived at Manchester United's training ground in the last 15 minutes. Both will have their medicals ahead of moves from Bayern Munich, and we expect those medicals to be happening today. And just another quick update for you. Girona have agreed a deal worth £6.8 million to sign Aberdeen striker Bojan Miovski. It's understood the two clubs are close to finalising the paperwork and finer details of the transfer. We will have more on that when we get it. But we must talk about Crystal Palace, guys, because they could end up, in this window, having lost 3 key players. Michael Olise is already gone. Could they be joined by Mark Guéhi and Joachim Andersen, the centre-back pairing? This is where we stand with Guéhi. Newcastle's second bid has been rejected. We're expecting a third to go in, while Fulham remain in talks with Palace over the signing of Joachim Andersen. He's played there before as well. A bid of 20 million has been rejected. James, this is interesting, isn't it? If you were a Crystal Palace fan and you look at last year, you'd say Olise, Eze, the 2 centre-backs, were probably their 4 key players. It could be in a situation where you lose 3 out of those 4 players. I mean, would you be concerned, or would you be excited about the kitty you're going to have to spend off the back of that?
And you've not even mentioned Eze, who is a player who is definitely of interest for clubs across the Premier League and in Europe. And whether or not that materialises in a concrete offer over the course of the next few weeks, we wait to see. But it was a brilliant, stunning end to the end of last season. They won 6 of the last 7 matches. They were clean sheets at Anfield. We speak about the attack, Mateta, Olise and Eze, but clean sheets at Anfield, clean sheets against Manchester United, and that 4-0 victory against Newcastle and Aston Villa to secure that top half finish. And a penny for the thoughts of Oliver Glasner, who in the summer Bayern Munich were interested in taking him to the club, but he was so happy with life at Selhurst Park after the way things have started. I don't think he was interested in those conversations. I think maybe he'd have something different to say if he does lose these key players in this window. Palace will strengthen if they do have money to spend, but it would be a shame after all the momentum they built up back end of last season.
Yeah. All right, let's just break off from that for a moment and get back to this dramatic pair arriving in Manchester United. That is Matthijs de Ligt and Noussair Mazraoui. They are in Manchester ahead of those moves from Bayern Munich. Vinny O'Connor joins us live from the club's training ground right now. Vinny, this deal is now getting closer and closer. What's the latest?
Yeah, well, we saw both players arrive in people carriers. They were blacked out windows, so we couldn't exactly tell who was inside, but we have had it confirmed that both players have arrived ahead of starting those medicals today. The expectation is that it shouldn't take too long. Certainly with Matthijs de Ligt as well, we look at the deal that the United have struck for him. They've agreed a deal worth £42.9 million with Bayern, £38.6 million effectively up front, with £4.3 million in add-ons. Personal terms not expected to be a problem with that one either. Of course, he's got history, we know, with Erik ten Hag as well, looking certainly to recover his best levels, his best form after losing his place in the Bayern side as well. But as I say, arriving a short while ago in one of those people carriers, and Noussair Mazraoui as well. His medical will start today, and particularly as well, United be happy with that progressing, because obviously with Wan-Bissaka moving to West Ham United as well, and that deal looking like that will go through. So the deal for Mazraoui is worth £17.2 million, £12.9 million plus performance-related add-ons of £4.3 million. As well. We know that obviously West Ham had agreed a deal with Mazraoui earlier this summer. That fell through after they turned their attention to Wan-Bissaka. So things beginning to hot up a little bit in the transfer window, but certainly United have 2 in the building at the moment, and the expectation is that there shouldn't be too much of a problem as regards those medicals, and there shouldn't be any problem really as regards personal terms either.
And how pleased will Erik ten Hag himself be to have got these 2 deals over the line, because it's 2 players he knows very well, particularly Matthijs de Ligt?
Yeah, certainly. I was thinking about that as well. And I think that the most important thing to remember is the injury problems that United have had in that back line going back to last season. Of course, then Yoro has come in this season and is out for 3 months as well after picking up that foot injury against Arsenal. But in terms of the knowledge that he's got of De Ligt and the history between them, and Erik ten Hag back in 2019 when De Ligt was his captain at Ajax, still a teenager, of course, at that point. I think he was still just 19 years of age. But ten Hag rated him as one of the best defenders in Europe and said in 2019 that he has no doubt he'll soon be number one in that position as well. He was 17 when he was the youngest player, of course, to feature in a Europa League final. He left Ajax when he was still a teenager as well, having made 100 appearances. That shows the experience he's got. He's still only 24, remember, as well. Had a decent time at Juventus, but maybe hasn't gone quite to plan at Bayern Munich. And so this move, obviously a big move to a club like Manchester United, a chance to recover his best form. And I mentioned, obviously, the deal that's been struck with Wan-Bissaka leaving Manchester United, or looking set to leave Manchester United for West Ham as well. They wanted to bring in a right-back of quality. They certainly look to be doing that with Mazraoui as well. So in terms of good business, good deals that United have done, this looks to be really just shoring up that back line for them heading in to the new season. Now, of course, both the signings need to be completed by midday on Thursday to be available for that season opener on Friday.
Top man, thanks, Vinny. Keep us updated, please. Right, not long to go until the start of the Premier League season. We thought it'd be a good time to pick our transfer 11s. Well, these three guys anyway. And there was a lot of debate, wasn't there, this morning in the office. You've settled on this 11. Are you happy with it, Dan?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a bit of a debate in the defence especially, and we can bring up some honourable mentions. Of course, Archie Gray did play at right back a lot for Leeds last season. We don't really know under Ange whether he'll play at centre-back, midfield or right back. I think Nikola Milinkovic, very good value for Nottingham Forest, £12 million from Fiorentina. What do you guys think?
I don't know about those two centre-halves. I mean...
Where's your man Todibo?
Todibo's got to be in there for me. I mean, I'm looking at Lenny Yoro, a little bit biased,
most
but
coveted defender,
I would have had Calafiori left back. I would have had, but but I think like what we're talking about here, that there's so many good signings been made already across that back line. Yeah. It's still a strong one. So if we're going into midfield now, we've gone with Smith Rowe, Onana, and Dewsbury Hall at Chelsea. Good picks, safe picks. There's a lot of midfielders who have moved this window, but I think actually that's a solid three, James.
I think so. And Smith Rowe, he's got a point to prove, hasn't he? It's a really sizable fee. Arsenal will be happy with the money they've got. I think Arsenal will be disappointed to let an academy graduate go. But already in pre-season, we've seen just how good Emil Smith Rowe is. And then you move into the forwards, Yankuba Minte. I think there were many eyebrows raised about the fee. Brighton wouldn't tend to spend that sort of money on someone who's slightly unproven. We've seen in pre-season how exciting he's going to be on that right flank. Pedro Neto, that announced yesterday by Chelsea. If he can stay injury-free, then surely he forced his way into that Chelsea lineup. I wouldn't want to be Enzo Maresca trying to put that team together. And Dominic Solanke, Tottenham looking for someone to replace Harry Kane. They've done that with Solanke, 19 Premier League goals last season. He knows he can score 20 or more this season.
Right, we run out of time, guys. What's he like, by the way? West Ham won the window. None of the West Ham players in his 11.
Dan took over.
All right, listen, we are back at 12 for Transfer Talk, but stay with us. Sue Smith and Stephen Warnock are back. It's the football show next. First one of this season.